The land Mira Costa High School sits on today was once owned by Star's Nursery, which belonged to a Japanese-American family, the Uyematsus. Star Nurseries consisted of 120 acres of property in Manhattan Beach, Montebello, and Sierra Madre. Francis Miyosaku Uyematsu was born in Japan in 1881 and immigrated to the United States in 1904 at the age of 23. Francis loved flowers. He wanted to share with California the beautiful flowers of his home country of Japan. He was especially interested in the scientific side of growing flowers, developing new species, and introducing camellias and cherry trees. He began importing camellias in 1908. He sold the flowers from a horse and a buggy on Figueroa and 12th Streets on the streets of downtown Los Angeles. The business was a success, and by 1912 he had enough money to buy land and start his own nursery in Newmark, where Montebello is today. He named his new business Star Nursery. Francis was a pioneer in new methods of growing flowers using temperature-controlled greenhouses. He was well known and respected in the nursery business and sat on the boards of many organizations. There was an increasing anti-Asian prejudice growing in California, and a xenophobic idea Japanese were trying to overtake white control of farmland. Xenophobia is the fear or dislike of someone because they are from another country. In 1913, California's Alien Land Law, which was primarily directed at Japanese immigrants, said immigrants to California could not own land. Using a loophole in the law, Uyematsu had to use the name of his oldest child, who was born in America and therefore an American citizen, to be able to expand his business and purchase more property in Sierra Madre and Manhattan Beach. This discriminatory law wasn't invalidated until 1952. Francis's camellias were special. According to the International Camellia Society, Uyematsu made a trip to Japan in 1930 and purchased hybridized camellia seeds, planting 25,000 of them in 113 different varieties. Over the years, Uyematsu imported and sold hundreds of thousands of camellias from Japan. He sometimes would ship as many as 60,000 camellias by rail to one buyer. Camellias bloom in the winter, so they are particularly desirable in the Midwest and East Coast. In September 1939, war broke out in Europe. On December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor in Hawaii was attacked by the Japanese, and America joined the fight. This war would later become known as World War II. The long-standing racism against Japanese Americans was fueled. On February 19, 1942, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066. Japanese immigrants and their descendants, regardless of American citizenship, or status, or length of residence, were rounded up and placed in detention centers. The U.S. government's stated reason for incarcerating the Japanese was military necessity, though no cases of espionage or sabotage were ever proven. 3 days after the order, on February 22, 1942, Francis was visited by Manchester Bodie, publisher of the Los Angeles Daily News, and Charles S. Jones, president of the Richfield Oil Company. Both men were amateur flower collectors. They offered to buy 300,000 camellia plants to be planted on Brodie's property in La Cañada. Today, that land is the Descanso Gardens. Many of the camellias found at this descanso were developed exclusively by Uyematsu. He has never received the proper credit for his many unique breeds that you can still see growing there today. With no time to decide what to do with their home, business, or belongings, the Uyematsus were sent to the Pomona Assembly Center, a temporary detention camp for Japanese Americans. They spent 3 to 4 months in Pomona before being placed on a train to the Mojave Desert and Manzanar War Relocation Center. Now known only as family number 22772, the Uyematsus lived in barracks, block number 6 and 10, apartment 2. They had a 20-foot by 24-foot room for 2 adults and 4 children. They had to share bathrooms, showers, and ate their meals in a large mess hall. Approximately 10,000 people were held in Manzanar. 2/3 of them were United States citizens. By November 1942, the U.S. government relocated 120,000 people of Japanese descent to 10 detention centers. The landscape of Manzanar was drab and empty. Uyematsu, part of the Community Development Committee of Evacuees, offered to donate 1,000 cherry trees and 80 wisteria vines to improve the desolate landscape. He was given special permit to return to his nursery in Los Angeles and used his own truck to transport the plants to Manzanar. The beautiful park was built in front of the Children's Village to bring joy to the orphans and other residents of Manzanar. Today, it is known as Japanese Cherry Park. During their time in Manzanar, the Stars nursery properties were maintained by white employees. In his biography, Uyematsu stated that the manager of the nursery looked at him as an enemy alien. Soon, the once profitable business started losing money. Uyematsu tried to hold on to his land, but eventually the land that made up Star Nurseries was sold off. The Uyematsu property in Manhattan Beach was divided into 5 parcels, and between 1944 to 1945 was sold off parcel by parcel. On November 21st, 1945, a few months after the U.S. bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki to end World War II, and nearly 4 years after Manzanar first opened, the government closed and dismantled the camp. Estimates have been made that 70% of the Japanese put in the camps lost everything during their 3.5 years behind barbed wire and guard towers. When the U.S. government finally began releasing the Japanese, they were each given $25 and a bus ticket. Anti-Asian discrimination continued after World War II. It wasn't until 1952 and the McCarran-Walter Act that the people of Asian ancestry were allowed to become U.S. citizens and the right to vote. By 1946, all that was left of his beloved 120-acre Manhattan Beach estate was 38.71 acres in the southwest of the property. On May 8, 1947, Redondo Union High School District purchased these last 40 acres of the land to be the future home of Mira Costa High School. Francis was now 66 years old. He had lost one of his sons in an accident a few months before Pearl Harbor, and he lost one of his daughters to tuberculosis caught while at Manzanar. Uyematsu never returned to his beloved nursery or his camellias. The internment of Japanese Americans is a sad part of American history, but important to learn about it. It is important to know about the history of the land we live on. And we should honor the legacy of the Uyematsu family. Today, Mayor Uyematsu, the only surviving member of the family, along with her 2 nieces, Amy Uyematsu and Mary Cow, and former Mira Costa teacher Chuck Carrier are working to tell the story of Francis Uyematsu, his nursery, and his beloved beautiful camellias. So the next time you drive by Mira Costa, imagine it covered in cherry trees and camellias.